Hello, everyone. Thanks for being with us today. I'm Stephanie Haney, and today we have the opportunity to talk with one of the actors from the very popular Netflix series Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. We're here with Karen Malina White. Hi, Karen. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Karen, you have acted in a number of different projects, and this one being such a sensitive story, a real life story. First question I want to ask you is how do you prepare for a role like that?
Wow. Well, I remember hearing about this story when it first happened, some of the salaciousness of it. Uh, but I didn't know many details at all, especially not about the victims. But thankfully, there are many things that are available to the public that, certainly up on YouTube. I was able to see the entire trial and did my own research as well as what was already in the script. Um, so it was, just having that ability and having that information out there that I was able to do my own research. Mhm.
Sure. And you're working with an incredible cast on this series. Your particular role is the mother of one of the victims. You play Shirley Hughes, the mother of the victim, Tony Hughes. And what we're seeing online is a lot of people are calling that particular episode especially heart-wrenching. Can you talk a little bit to us about playing your role in that episode as the mother of Tony Hughes?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when I read the story, I just fell in love with this kid, this young man, and just his zest for life and his ability to, approach his challenge of being deaf and not letting it get in the way. He wanted to be an actor. He just had huge dreams and he was just so full of life and a wonderful personality. So I fell in love with him. And so I really wanted to get this role. I was also excited because it gives me a chance to use some of my ASL skills that I had. And I just thought it was just a beautiful story and a story of love and a wonderful family. And despite what had happened to him, this was amazing young man, and I wanted to for his story to be told and for people to get to know who he was beyond Dahmer.
Absolutely. And that's something that has been a conversation about this is the people behind this project, Ryan Murphy and his team, they've talked about trying to tell the stories from a victim perspective. Do you feel that you have gained any more insight into the scenarios that happened after playing this role? Or how's that been like for you during that doing that research and sort of learning more about the Dahmer story?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I really got to know, from the family's perspective, what was going on, what was happening. We certainly got to see, just some of the biases and the racism that aided and abetted essentially Dahmer. Just having that white skin privilege, those kinds of things I didn't know about. Didn't know about the neighbors, really trying to say something and scream and shout that something wasn't had gone awry or something wasn't quite right. So all of those little details that I think Ryan Murphy and certainly the director of my episode, Paris Barclay, Janet Mock, one of the producers, that Carl Franklin, that they really wanted to highlight this, almost like the story behind the story, some of the things that we did not know about um, behind this horrific event.
And for those who aren't aware, again, your character, Shirley Hughes, the mother of Tony Hughes, he was 31 years old, a member of the LGBTQ plus community. As you said, he had acting aspirations of his own, also was hearing impaired. So you mentioned you were able to use some of your ASL issues, American Sign Language, some of that training. Where does that come from? How long have you been versed in ASL?
All right. Well, I'm not fluent. I do know a little bit. I first encountered the language when I was 15. I went to an arts summer camp called the Pennsylvania Governor's School for the Arts. I'm from Philadelphia, and I attended their performing arts high school. And so I went to this summer arts camp, and that's where I first started studying. I studied a little bit years later in New York when I was doing the Cosby Show. In fact, Erica Alexander and I took a class together, and we went to Gallaudet University, University for the Deaf, and we did a silent weekend there. So I've been flirting on and off. I did a little bit at CSUN as well once I moved out to LA. I did have a wonderful tutor and coach on set with me, and lots of interpreters there. But it was a language that I just think is so beautiful, and I was always attracted to it.
Now let's turn to the genre that the Netflix series Monster falls into. It's the true crime genre. It's captivating for people across the country, obviously incredibly popular series on Netflix. As someone who is creating material in this space, what do you think it is about the true crime genre that really pulls people in?
Um, I think it's that. It's that it's true. It's factual. It's things that we may have heard a little bit about, or maybe stories we hadn't heard of. And it really kind of, it has all of those elements. It has suspense, and it has history behind it. And it's that particular, just that genre, that drama, that dramatic elements, I think really pulls people in. We have those television shows, and like this, we have these movies and these, I mean, it kind of speaks a little bit to our society, not in a good way, that we like salaciousness. We can get caught up in some of these evil characters and what makes them tick, and how do they get to do what they do, because of I guess society, or however it happens, whether it was in childhood, or any of those things. So it's that fascination of people. Acting is social psychology. It's a study of human behavior. And so as an actor, I go into it like a science as well. So we're attracted to human beings and how we behave and why we behave the way we do, I think.
Is there anything different for you when it comes to preparing to present a performance that is based in truth rather than if you're doing something that's fiction based?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly much harder when you're portraying somebody um, who is alive, or was alive. People that they can go and compare, and they can look and see. So it's a lot more pressure for sure, to get it right. It's pressure to honor the people that you do, without any kind of judgment. You certainly want to tell people's story right. You want to do it right. So it's a lot more pressure, um, but it's also, in a way, can be rewarding that maybe somebody's story hasn't been told, and maybe we can tell it in a different way.
This story is definitely being introduced to an entire new generation with the popularity of this series. Your performance in it incredibly compelling, definitely telling a side of the story that people have not heard and seen. There are people who are going to enjoy the series. There are also people who have been a little bit critical of it. Is there anything that you'd like to say to people who may have been critical about the show?
I get it. I totally get it. It's a very painful thing. It's very traumatic, and I can't even imagine what the families went through. Um, but again, our intention was to highlight the life, and not the death and the victimization, that these young men had hopes and dreams, and they were loved, and they wanted to be loved, um, like everyone. And so we wanted to show the value of their life and their humanity, and how important it was.
Well, thank you for your work in highlighting the story and bringing it to new generation, Karen. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And as you know, here in Northeast Ohio, Jeffrey Dahmer did grow up just south of Cleveland in Bath, Ohio. And our investigative reporter, Marissa Sines, actually talked with his former defense attorney and a former neighbor of his. So let's hear that now, the Dahmer that we know.
To true crime lovers, he is fascinating. For many, his crimes are too gruesome to fathom. But for some, knowing Jeffrey Dahmer is simply a real-life story. Through the lens of our video, seen for the first time in over 30 years, we share with you the Dahmer we know.
What do you do in there?
The story of Jeffrey Dahmer is captivating a new generation across the globe.
I hear screaming coming from your apartment.
But for some here in Northeast Ohio, it's reliving a story many still can't understand.
My address was 4485 West Bath Road, and Jeff Dahmer's was 4480 West Bath Road, right across the street.
For childhood friend Eric Tyson, the early memories around Bath Township are innocent, full of nostalgia.
This is the hill. Our school bus stop was just up ahead at the base of this hill. It was up here, this driveway up on the left. That's where our old school bus was. On our left is Jeff Dahmer's house. My house is right across the street. That's my old house. It looks a lot different.
Tyson says he and Dahmer, just 3 years apart, spent many of their young years together, hiking and biking, until each took vastly different paths.
He had quite a collection of skeletons, and he was interested in that. Nothing I particularly was interested in, but to each their own.
By high school, they'd drift apart. Dahmer played tennis. Tyson was into electronics and photography.
By the time he started driving, I didn't see him a whole lot.
But Tyson can't shake moments of Dahmer that were less than normal.
I think Jeff was lonely. He was an attention getter. He wanted to do crazy antics, and making noises and that sort of stuff.
Dahmer began his killing spree close to home. The first in 1978, just 3 weeks after graduation from Revere High. Tyson had no clue of the horror happening just yards away.
We were watching the news and the story broke, and the phone rang right away.
Dahmer picked up 18-year-old Stephen Hicks, killing the Summit County teen and burying him around the house.
Well, I knew the property. I knew the little door underneath the house where they say he had stashed the body.
The days aren't so fun for his attorney, Bob Mosener.
And frankly, I've never had a client like Jeffrey Dahmer.
A recommendation from a reporter would lead Dahmer's father, Lionel, to Mosener, who was in Philadelphia with no sights set on the national story.
Wasn't following the case. Wasn't interested in it.
Mosener describes his meeting with Dahmer as nothing less than how he's portrayed on the screen.
But hearing the graphic detail was more than I could stand.
I had a drill at home, and it's gonna sound bad.
He traveled up to Wisconsin and visited him at the prison. Like in the Silence of the Lambs, they had him in an area that was like a cage, actually, with plexiglass or bulletproof glass.
Dahmer was cold, short-answered, leaving Mosener with a certain creepy crawl on his skin.
The first interview was very strange. And after the interview, you could see that there was nothing there in his eyes. I was very uncomfortable with it, and usually I'm not with my clients.
Dahmer would plead guilty, be sentenced to life, and sent back to Wisconsin. It would be the last time the two would ever talk.
I told Jeffrey's father after the sentencing that I predicted he would not live 2 years in prison, that they would kill him in prison. This guy was a monster. I don't know how else to describe him.
There's the house. It looks the same, a little different color right now.
While Tyson and Mosener have left it all behind, others seemingly can't let the story of Jeffrey Dahmer die.
Everyone's just sort of, the story won't go away.
Marissa Sines, 3 News.
Incredible reporting by Marissa. Marissa and our investigative team, thank you very much for that. If you'd like to see an extended version of Marissa's piece about the Dahmer we know, you can find that on WKYC Plus and the WKYC YouTube page.